We ranting today? Yeah. So I was tweeting way too much today. I hate when I tweet too much. I hate it. I feel like it takes a hit to your aura, right? You got to be nonchalant and mysterious. But when I get riled up over the Capcom Pro Tour, and because the beast said some choice words, I can't help it. I'm about to complain and use maybe some harsh language from a place of love because I care. I think the number one thing that you need to avoid in the attention economy and in general with any kind of community endeavor is having people not care. Indifference. Indifference is how this dies, right? Whatever we have going on, this weird thing we have with the whole Street Fighter scene, fighting game scene, the number one thing we need to avoid is indifference. When people are complaining about things, they might do it in a way that's harsh, in a way that's insensitive to the feelings of those involved, and that might be a little bit too critical and too negative, but at least they probably care, right? Indifference is death. Okay, that's the preamble to this. Daigo, he posted this video. Well, his team posted this video from his stream. English subtitles: why it's hard for Japanese pro players to attend overseas tournaments. I'm not going to go through the whole video live. I did actually go and summarize his main points from the video, and we'll look at some clips. But the main thing he's talking about in this video is, why does it seem that less Japanese players are traveling to overseas and international Capcom Pro Tour events than in previous years and in previous formats, right? So reminder, what is going on with the Capcom Pro Tour? Well, we do have international open bracket tournaments for qualifying spots for the Capcom Pro Tour, but once again, the vast majority of the qualifications come from the World Warrior. Look at the spots here, right? We have 3 qualifiers: Punk 1 Evo, Mena RD 1, Cream City Convergence, Kusanagi 1, UFA. Then we have ECT coming up, and we have a handful more premieres throughout the rest of the season. And then that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more offline tournaments, one this weekend. I think these are all like 3 weekends in a row. And then that's it. That's it for offline competition besides the Capcom Cup itself. Everybody else, what, there's 48 qualifiers, so 40 of them are coming from the World Warrior. I might have fudged the numbers a little bit here. They're all from region-locked online World Warrior tournament circuits where people will compete in their region. You have 5 total tournaments, region-locked. Only the players in those regions can compete in. If you win those tournaments or do well, you get points. The top 8 players will go to a regional finals and compete in that for 1 spot. And if you're a super region, whoever has the most points at the end just automatically qualifies, right? So some regions get 2 players, some regions get 1. So that means that regions like Japan, where Daigo is from, and the vast majority of the best players on the planet, which is a fact, that's something I gotta like make sure it's very clear. None of this discussion can move forward unless me and you, the audience, we all agree on the fact that Japan has the largest density of talent on the planet in Street Fighter, bar none. No one is messing with them, and the skill per capita, I'm sensing this when I go into the Twitter discussions. I sense this disconnect. It's not even glazing Japan. I'm not saying that the number 1 player in the world is Japanese, and I'm not saying that there's not top players from around the world who can beat all of them. I'm just saying per capita, the top 100 players in Japan, if you did a round robin, would smoke the planet with top 100 players from any other region. If you go to the top 100 in other regions, you're picking up people off the street who've never heard of Street Fighter 6 before. Okay? Doing tricks on it? Facts. Okay? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We have to be in agreement with this because this is the world we live in. Okay? And I've noticed this disconnect over time where people are acting like Japan doesn't just have an insane number of high-level players all in a one small nation. It's just the reality. Once again, top players from around the world can beat them. It happens all the time, and oftentimes I think the best players on the planet are often not Japanese. You ask me to name top 5 right now. I'm going to name Punk. I'm going to name like an Angry Bird, a Big Bird, Mena RD. I'm going to look at maybe a Xiaohai right now for recency bias, right? He's killing it. There's other players from other regions I'm going to name first, but beyond, if you're talking about overall consistency, it's going to be Japan, okay? Okay, we're all in agreement here. There's no debate. If you can't accept that fact, we cannot move forward. Anyways, so that means if you're from Japan, you only get 2 guaranteed spots into Capcom Cup. You're sharing these other 48 spots with players from, from Oceania, Australia, and I think New Zealand is in there also. Brazil, which Brazil has mad good players. Spain, Portugal, Europe West, the US Midwest, US East, US West, right? You're splitting your spots with all these different regions across the world. And then, of course, you also have the chance to send your players out to one of these 8 premier events to take the other open bracket spots that anyone can win, right? These are open to the world. You just have to be able to show up and play and then win the tournament. Now, the super premiers are slightly different. The top 2 will actually qualify for Capcom Cup in the super premiers. So I think it's not actually 40 online spots. It might be slightly less, 38. But yeah, so that's the only difference is these super premiers, the Singapore and the Japan one, will give the top 2 qualifying spots. The rest of these are winner take all. Compare that to 2019 and before, where it was a point system where the best players would compete in offline tournaments around the world. Yes, there was bias in these locations. Absolutely. A lot of the tournaments took place in North America, some in Europe. There was limited access to players to regions like in Latin America. There's still nothing in Africa. There's nothing in Australia, I think. Limited events in Asia even. Yeah, it's biased. There's physical tournaments you have to be able to get to and travel to compete and have the funds, the means, the time to be able to show up and compete. But you were awarded points based on your placing. Therefore, over the season, if you continued to travel and had the funds and the means to do so, if you continued to place well, you would gain points for consistency rather than just being required to win one event and qualify. That way we can get a general picture over the end of the season of the most consistent players, and then the top 32 players in the world would qualify. When we do this format, which is what we've done, some form of this since 2016 and beyond, and even before then, it was sort of a hybrid of auto qualifiers and points. 50% of the bracket was Japanese. I mean, Punk was just Punk. He's like the number 1 in multiple years in Street Fighter V, just untouchable. But 50% of the bracket usually ends up being Japanese players, because these Japanese players would go to every freaking tournament, tons of them. At least 12 to 20 Japanese players would be going, top Japanese players would be traveling around because, they had a good incentive to do so, because if they placed well, if they performed well, they would get points, which would help them in their qualification process to Capcom Cup and award them with that. And also there was a decent amount of prizing for placing in the top 8 at these events. And then, but the main incentive and goal was to be part of the Pro Tour and get into the Capcom Cup. Right? So Daigo's video, bombshell of a video, summary of some of the points. So first off, he talks about why a lot of Japanese players are not currently traveling, right? Financially, it's extremely inefficient for Japanese players to travel overseas for CPT tournaments. So he mentions that immediate financial gain for staying home and streaming their practice for Street Fighter League rather than traveling internationally. Plus, they're participating in Street Fighter League Japan, so they have a busy schedule with that. But there's the high cost of international travel expenses, plus the yen is weak right now, and you could only recoup costs if you win the whole thing. He's admitting that for top level players, it is better for them to just stay home and stream their practice because the incentives for traveling have been eroded. This was true that you can only recoup costs if you win the whole thing. This was always true. This was always true even prior to 2020 or prior to COVID, except for the fact that you were also incentivized due to the point system. So even if you just made a 5th place finish, that was a good number of points to raise your odds for qualifying for Capcom Cup, which would be your job as a sponsored player. On top of that, not only are they spending a lot of money to travel, they're losing money via opportunity costs by not staying home and just streaming, because while they stream, you make money, right? You make money from ad revenue, make money from donations. That is almost becoming the job of the pro player, is to stay home and stream and build your brand and build your audience that way, rather than traveling for competition instead. So he understands why these players aren't going to all these international tournaments. He says if CPT rules were still with points, 99% of Japanese pros would still travel even with Street Fighter League Japan going on. So he says that even though these other points are true, that the cost is high, the yen is weak, and they're losing money for not streaming, if it was a point system, that would be enough of an incentive for 99% of the pros to pack their leverless controllers these days and actually travel. But without that incentive of the point system, where it's simply winner take all, it's not worth it, because 15 Japanese players go to a premiere, only one of them can qualify. For the 14 other players, it is a waste of time and money. It is improperly allocated resources for them. It is too high of a risk. There's nothing to hedge your bets like this point system. which can incentivize consistency even if you don't necessarily take it all. So Daigo is saying that he has in a unique sponsor situation. He talks about this divide between two different types of sponsors. One where you were sponsored as a player, but you don't necessarily get to pick the events you travel to, and you might be obligated to only just participate in Street Fighter League and in local regional events. And then others where you're able to pick your own travel situation and they'll pay for basically whatever you want. Daigo saying, I am currently traveling the world and going on all these tournaments because, you know, I'm in a unique situation where my sponsor will just pay for whatever tournament I choose to go to. And most players do not have that. And he says it's not just the players making this decision. He's saying the teams have also decided that it's too financially inefficient to pay for their players to go to these events, because if you don't win, you get nothing. We're wasting our money entirely. It's better for you to just stay home and stream and then do Street Fighter League. So not only are the players themselves not incentivized, the sponsors feel like it's a waste as well. There's no incentive just to this crapshoot. That's like you're banking on a hole-in-one on a tournament with tons of other high-level players going to it. It's not worth it. It was already not worth the risk before. Keep in mind, I also have thoughts about even the previous CPT format. But it's not worth the risk. If they reverted to CPT rules, it would be like Esports World Cup where Japanese players dominated. This is where it gets interesting. It's kind of interesting. And this is where he has some choice words. I'll actually go to the video for this one. If they reverted to old CPT rules, they would travel.
でやっぱ日本人からすると、いや、もっと日本が強いんだから日本の枠増やしてくれよっていうふうに思うと思うんだけど、俺はまあ正直これでいいのかなっていうか、その
Things might be fine the way they are. If we let Japan be the beginning and the end of the scene, it's going to taper off. It'll end. It's not that significant for a fighting game to garner some excitement in a small country like this, speaking of Japan. If you look ahead, it's best to consider the overseas audience. Taking the long view, if you have to build excitement overseas, you have to build excitement overseas or you'll have a problem. So while Japanese players may not have many opportunities to compete despite our high skill level, it's better for building hype around the game to give these opportunities to players from all over the world. That's a rationale I find pretty reasonable. So I feel like maybe it's okay for things to stay how they are. Daigo, I think it's crazy that I'm saying this, but I disagree with everything you just said. I think the reasons you listed are exactly why the CPT feels whack. It feels whack and people don't care and you're losing excitement. Everything you just said, all the points you just mentioned, are exactly why I think the CPT is losing its influence in the sphere of the fighting game community and the greater gaming sphere. It is not building hype overseas. It is losing it. I don't think he understands that we want to see the international competition. I don't want to watch a tournament where it's the same people competing in World Warrior now just finally offline. Now, it might be novel the first time. Like if I watch a premier event where it's primarily composed of the local talent, if I'm not following the scene and I don't know like where all these players stand, it's going to be an exciting event maybe for the first time. But it's more exciting when I can see their skill gauged against known figures and see how they, are able to combat and contrast the play styles from known players from all over the planet. That's the point of international competition. It's so sick to see players from all over the world compete against each other, because then you have some way to have some context and to gauge the players' levels, and also you have much more involved storylines. You have upsets, you have underdogs, you have people from underrepresented regions who have been working for a long time to have their chance to go up against players from the best region on the planet that people know and are international stars. If those players only compete amongst themselves in the online World Warrior, nobody is watching that shit. Nobody is watching these online World Warrior qualifiers. I'm sorry to say, it's not working. It is giving these players an opportunity, absolutely. And I think that's great. I do think we cannot forego online tournaments. We cannot sacrifice that. As a competitor, I love the online World Warrior format. As a competitor. As an audience member, I think it's ass. I think it's horrific. Why would I compete in the World Warrior Midwest? Why would I ever watch it? If I wasn't actively competing in the Midwest World Warrior, which I do appreciate the convenience, the fact that I have an opportunity to compete and earn some cash and potentially go to Capcom Cup, that's great. I love that. Do it from the comfort of my own boxers right here. But I wouldn't watch it. Why would I watch it? Why would I want to watch the same players play each other over and over? Now, the same thing could be said for any region that doesn't have this representation. Look at like a region like Brazil, for example. Brazil has some of the best players on the planet, and I think they have not gotten the same shot that they're seen based on their level and size really deserves. I still don't want to watch their World Warrior events like that. I'm not engaged. I'm not engaged with the process. There's 5 tournaments happening over a whole year-long span. They're online. I'm not connected to the players. The production is in local languages, which makes sense, but it's like, and they're not getting views. They're not getting views. The only World Warrior events that are getting views are in Japan. The only place any of this is working is Japan. Japan is becoming more insular, and we're becoming less connected. And the weird thing is, it's not bothering, I think, the Japanese players, because they are thriving. Because Street Fighter 6, it's so much wasted potential. We had such a fantastic launch. And beside the number one thing, which is the lack of content. The lack of content is the biggest wasted potential here. The lack of costumes and regular updates. That's the number one thing that Street Fighter 6 is dropping the ball on. The second thing, though, is the CPT format, because we had something so good prior to COVID, and I think the CPT was the best ad you could have possible. CPT carried Street Fighter V, bro. Street Fighter V was dead in the water when it released, and it slowly built its way back to survive for X number of seasons and kept improving season after season, after patch, after content update. They constantly were cranking out fixes, patches, DLC characters, and costumes, and I fucking love Street Fighter V by the end of it. I hated that game on release. And the CPT carried that shit. CPT, in the worst era of Street Fighter history, had some of the greatest moments of all time. It has tournaments that are legendary in my mind to this day. Street Fighter 6 legendary release. We've had too few international tournaments. And like, where are the storylines? I try to engage in that and try to lean into the storylines, and I do all of those tournament recaps, and I do a lot of analysis on that sort of stuff, because I want to lean into that, because I think that's where the power is to draw people in, and that's the stuff that gets me excited as well. So I don't like to be negative about it, because I care, and I like to spin things positively to draw people in. So I feel like I'm doing my part usually with my tournament recaps and things like that. I try to do something to make it happen. And so Daigo saying that this is bringing excitement overseas, I think it's killing overseas interest in competitive Street Fighter. And I think it's ironic, because I think competitive Street Fighter is only doing better in Japan. Now, I will say Street Fighter 6, I think, has higher tournament entrants on the local level. That is true. But the viewership, the engagement, and the audience awareness is degrading. I think we have more players than ever. I think the product and the online package is great, so people are able to quickly pick up and play. But I think the interest in the specific competitive scene is taking a hit. The biggest events we have are Evo and now Esports World Cup. Now look at this. Let me give you some context here, right? Capcom Cup 2019, like I mentioned, 50% of the bracket is usually Japanese. That's how it is, right? They went to the most tournaments, they had the most sponsored players, and they were the strongest, and they consistently outperformed everybody, and they qualified. CEO 2019, how about that? That's a big one, right? Take a look at the notable entrants. Look how many Japanese flags are up there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 Japanese players, not to mention, a handful of players from China, from France, from Singapore, from wherever, right? There's a large international player base in attendance, with 448 players attending this event. Yeah, you're right, CEO. Maybe that's a tough one to use, because how much of a legacy it has, right? Canada Cup, though. Canada Cup 2019. This is after Canada Cup took a big hit in 2018, I believe, because they were at that, they're at a convention that they weren't even a part of, and the convention turned off the power during grand finals or during the top 3 or something. Canada Cup 2018 took a big hit to its reputation. Only 99 people signed up for this tournament, which is actually crazy to look back at. But look at the players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. More than 10% of the bracket was from Japan. More than 10% of the bracket is in Calgary. and they're all from Japan. That's nuts. But this tournament was a shit show. I technically went 0-2 this tournament because I lost to Sarah Blast and Mr. Crimson. Those were the only 2 people I played were Sarah Blast and Mr. Crimson, and I made CPT points this tournament. There was that many DQs and that small of a bracket. So this was a whole other shit show. This is a separate story. I got points for going 0-2 here. But let's compare now to CPT 2024. We have 300 players at a premier tournament in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The first premier we've had post Evo, I believe. International players, if you squint your eyes, you might be able to spot, oh, there he is. 1 Japanese player, Daigo Umehara. We went from a 99-man tournament in Calgary, Canada, with 12 Japanese players, and however many, 20 plus at CEO 2019, to one player from Japan decided to make the trip out to potentially qualify for Capcom Cup. And then you also have the 2 players from UK and Menardi and Kava, and Thunder and Riddles from Canada. That's it for international presence at this event. Okay, you can say it's not a legacy event, 1-day tournament. Sure. UFA had 450 people in attendance. How many Japanese players? Tachikawa, Daigo, Goichi. This is not a 1-day tournament. UFA is a storied, legendary event. 3 Japanese players showed up. They did a 5v5 world tournament, and they did not have enough Japanese players to form an all-Japan team. This is not how the CPT used to be. And once again, only 1 player qualified. That was Kusanagi. Big shots to Kusanagi. Awesome tournament, by the way. This was still a great time. There was still a decent amount of international competition. I still really enjoyed it. But that enjoyment comes from the international competition. What about UFA 2019? It wasn't CPT. I'm trying to compare premieres to premieres. How about ECT? ECT is coming up. 600 players in attendance. How many Japanese players? Premier tournament, Daigo and Itabashi Zengi. So only 2 players. So you can just, and in general, how many international players? Ending Walker, Angry Bird, Big Bird. That's it. So basically what this tournament ends up being is this is TNS plus a few international players. We're losing the draw for why people want to watch these events. It used to be pools to all 3 days were novel matchups from players from all over the world, and you would be glued to the stream all 3 days because you would care about seeing things that you haven't seen before. Now, here's the kicker. I'm talking about the CPT events, but we also had another big tour this year. We had the Esports World Cup. How many international players do you think showed up to a random DreamHack qualifier in Dallas, which was never a premier event, never had any sort of legacy, never any history in the FGC? How many international players do you think showed up because they had 8 spots to qualify for Esports World Cup? DreamHack Dallas, 391 number of players. Japan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And you notice that it's not just Japan. They have enough to have sections for every different region represented here. Look at this tournament compared to CPT premieres. This is not CEO. This is not Combo Breaker. This is a random DreamHack Dallas. There's more Asian players than there are Americans. There's more notable players internationally than there are Americans at this event. Facts. The Esports World Cup, I hate to say it because I don't want Saudi Arabia to just completely buy out Capcom Cup. Brother, they're eating Capcom Cup's lunch right now because the format is just so much more incentivizing for players to travel for. The prize pool for Esports World Cup is what, like 300,000, 400,000 for first place? Shanghai got 300,000 for first place. But the way they structure it, if you get top 8 or top X at a tournament, it's not first place qualifies. They do top X. You have a much higher chance of qualifying, so you're much more incentivized to go to the tournament. So now all these players showed up. You're telling me Capcom Cup, first of all, remember, first place for Capcom Cup, $1 million. For $1 million, we can only get one Japanese player to show up. For a chance to win $300,000, but because there's 8 qualifying spots, you can get 20 plus players from all over Europe, Middle East, and Asia. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not more money. It's not more money. It's not more money. Capcom Cup is more money. Capcom Cup is more money. I don't know what else we have to do. I don't know what else I have to say about this. Capcom Cup is offering far more money. They're spending more money everywhere. They're spending more money in the World Warrior qualifiers. You make money for the regional finals for the World Warrior. They're spending more money on the actual Capcom Cup itself. There's far more events for Capcom Cup. It's just the system is messed up. Is the club system too? That is fair. That is very fair. A large reason why these players are traveling, that is absolutely fair to mention for the Esports World Cup. It's because Saudi is throwing around money like crazy, not just for the players in the actual tournament, but also for the club system. That is facts. They do sponsor players. So I don't think it's a 100% fair comparison. That is very good to mention. And I think if that didn't exist, these numbers would be less. It wouldn't be as dramatic of a contrast, for sure. That is very true. However, I think the trend is there. You need to make the carrot in the tournament better, dude. You can't just have incentive for first place. If you're not first, you're last is the dumbest mentality to have in a competitive scene, because it means everybody starves but one person. And that means, why the fuck would I do this when I could just stay home and stream? What is the point? Why would I risk starving when I can just stay home and stream? Even DreamHack Summer, right? This one was later, so more and more people were starting to follow. Look at DreamHack Summer in Sweden. One's in Dallas, one's in Sweden. International competition galore. CEO 2023, here's a good comparison. CEO 2023, not a CPT event. It was the first major tournament after Street Fighter 6 released, and it wasn't fitting into the CPT schedule. Prior to EVO 2023, 1,081 entrants. International participants, Rickmans, Barnett, Mena RD, Kava, Arslan. I think he was more there for Tekken. Oh, Veggie, and I guess Norway showed up, right? Vietnam, yeah. So it was pretty much an all NA affair, right? Because it's not part of the CPT. Well, what happened to CEO the next year, 2024? It wasn't part of CPT again, but it was part of Esports World Cup. This time only offering the final 2 spots, or among the final 2 spots, not top 8. Less of an incentive to travel here. Only 2 spots available for Esports World Cup at CEO 2024. Less international competition for sure, but Moke, Daigo, NL, Ending Walker, Ola King, Fudo, Tachikawa, Mena RD. It started to taper off. As you taper off, less and less players are trying to show up, and also more and more players have already qualified. But still, they showed up. You had none in 2023. No one showed up in 2023. There's a very linear correlation between qualifying spots and incentives and showing up. And also, once again, look at this prize pool split. First place, $300,000. Second place, $140,000. Next, $75,000. Capcom Cup, $1 million for first place, $100,000 for second, third $50,000, fourth $20,000, fifth $10,000, seventh $5,000. This split is barbaric. If you got into Esports World Cup, you got $45,000 for fifth, or for eighth, really. $5,000 in Capcom Cup. Even getting into Capcom Cup, say you did spend all your money trying to get to these premieres, and then you happen to qualify in one of the 8 offline tournaments with the 10 spots available. Even if you managed to pull that off, if you didn't go all the way to at least like 4th place in Capcom Cup, you're losing money still. You're still losing money. This split is fucking dumb. It's dumb. I don't know how else to say it. It's dumb. This is a dumb thing to do. This is dumb. Because I think, listen, what is the purpose of the Pro Tour, right? That's something I also want to make sure that you are aware that I'm thinking of. Every time I talk about this, people like to be like, well, but it's not about this, it's about that. You're not thinking about this. I am thinking about it. I understand that the purpose of the Pro Tour, in my view, is not to have the most perfect competitive circuit that everyone feels like they're valued and able to participate in, and that we, number one, determine the best players on the planet and list them first to last, right? That is not the purpose of the Pro Tour. It's not realistic either. It's about advertising Street Fighter 6 and then getting some kind of return on investment by being a big ad for the game. And that way they raise awareness about the game. People purchase it. keep it going as a live service and pay for DLC. Okay, how many people were saying that the Esports World Cup was $1 million tournament? I almost believe that some of you in the chat right now had heard that or believed that the Esports World Cup was $1 million tournament. I guarantee you there's someone watching this right now who had that idea like floating in their head loosely and they don't know where it came from. No one is winning $1 million from Esports World Cup. They're just throwing upwards to $1 million around. They got the branding across. You don't have to give the first place $1 million check to get that branding across. They split up the pricing much more evenly as you go down. Every single level gets paid significantly more than gets paid at Capcom Cup. They're able to still have that prestige and that buzz in your mind stick without them handing a person $1 million check in the end. I don't believe you're achieving a more sensational headline that will reach more people by taking all the money from the rest of the competitors and putting it into first place. I don't believe that. For winning EVO, you don't get more than placing 7th and 8th at Capcom Cup, but people still go. EVO is the only tournament that still exists that is about prestige, or has that prestige at that level. That is the only tournament on the planet that will ever be that. EVO is EVO. Kumite? Yeah, but Kumite is a rockstar event. If you get invited to Kumite, you get treated like a rockstar for a weekend. EVO, you purposely put up with going through shit conditions and get shit pay to climb to the top of the mountain. EVO, the whole point of EVO is, yeah, that is the last prestige tournament that is meant to be open to the world. Show up, see who wins after the marathon is over. That's the whole point of EVO. That is not the point of a Pro Tour. Now, if you want the only tournament that people ever go to be EVO, fine. That's what's happening. You're kind of proving my point. The only tournament that's left is EVO. No one is going to anything else. EVO has one qualifying spot for Capcom Cup. It used to be worth a ton of points, by the way. EVO used to be a super premiere in the 2019 sense, where if you place top 64, you're getting juicy points for the CPT. EVO is the last tournament people go to. Now, for all these players, for economic reasons as well, they're not going to go to any other tournament. They're going to go to EVO. EVO is the one tournament they go to. This is the only time you'll see this. EVO is growing more than ever, but EVO is EVO. And once again, EVO is not something that rewards the players. This is a case of an entity that's growing, an event that's growing, which is good for the scene, but it's not necessarily something that directly funds or awards the players, whereas the CPT does. Whereas the Capcom Pro Tour is much more like a symbiotic thing, or ideally is like a symbiotic thing, right? Like you would want the Capcom Pro Tour to grow, and that would also help the players' livelihoods grow. But as it stands right now, it's just... So the reason I'm having this rant is also because Daigo said, it's better for building hype around the game to give these opportunities to players from all over the world. I strongly feel that players are far less, and the audiences are far less in tune with the international events we have because they're more irregular. The schedule is much more infrequent. There's less international competition. People cared about seeing these players. When you went to a CPT tournament, a premiere back in the day, it was an event because you would see players there that you would never get the chance to see for the rest of your life if they did not have that event. You would never meet these people or see them or have the chance to play them in person. These tournaments enabled that. Then the audience members, most people don't care about tournaments because it's TNS plus 2 international players. They see this every other week. The schedule of events is less frequent, so it's harder to follow. They're more sporadic. The storylines don't naturally develop because you don't get these rivalries. Right now in the Tekken World Tour, there's the whole Ulsan was dominating every event. There is storylines developing based on the players' performances. This is a natural thing that happens. The rivalry between Arslan and Ulsan, right? Like this was a thing. You could see the development of the rivalries between the players over time, which I think adds a lot of appeal. I really enjoy watching the points over time for the Capcom Pro Tour. Now, the positives that I always want to make sure I touch on are, yes, previously it was extremely biased towards players who had world-class sponsorships, were located in popular regions where the events were, like America, and those who just had the funds and means to travel. That is a fact. That is a fact. 2020 and beyond, we shifted the format to be the World Warrior, and now we have a lot more representation from all over the world. That is great. That is awesome we have that. Generally, what happens in Capcom Cup, by the time we start getting towards the end, we still end up with mostly mostly known players from mostly Asian regions. That is generally what happens. Now, people will point to Uma as being like the outlier, and that is to a degree true. He's still from a highly competitive region in Asia and competed with players that we had seen competing internationally the entire time. So I don't think that's the Cinderella story that people try to spin too much, in my opinion, in terms of him being from like an unknown region that no one knew he could be. No, I don't think that's true. I think it was, if you analyzed where he came from and his performance, it was clear that he was a strong player, and like him winning is not like, it's not the same as a player from a completely underrepresented region winning. Chris Wong's practice partner, right? Chris Wong was like the most prolific player. He competed with all the time from Taiwan. We've had other dominant players from Taiwan, Gamer B. Like, it's not unheard of that a player from Taiwan is great. Uma himself wasn't that known and didn't perform well in offline tournaments, but it's not, he's still from a dominant region, like a region that has dominance in the past. You know? So as you tend to filter up, I think the most fairy tale thing to me was fucking Safe. Safe had the most fairy tale run, in my opinion. Everyone else, as you got up, it's like, yeah, you kind of expect these kind of players to go far. You kind of expect it. As soon as you get out of groups, typically the players from underrepresented regions tend to not proceed. Now, that's not to say that they don't deserve these opportunities. They do. My point is, the way these opportunities are distributed does not generate excitement in the way I think Capcom is assuming it would. Because the World Warrior format, while I think it's really convenient and great for competitors, it's not exciting. I'm sure for audience members in those regions, it is exciting. But they play in the group stages. They don't play that many matches per day, which first of all are not seeded properly because we have no point system, because we don't have any international cross-pollination, so we have to randomly assign these groups. The groups end up being not balanced and ends up being a lot of matches that I don't think people care about. Now, I'm not saying that these players shouldn't be there. What I'm saying is they show up, you don't know who they are, you don't know what their story is, they play, they might win a game or two, but like historically they end up losing, usually. And then that's it. So I don't even think it's doing the players a service. There's no buildup of who they are, what they've been through, how they got here. Should you care? Why should you care? I think that's what they do in the Olympics, right? To a degree. They show up. They're from a country. They do their dive. They accidentally curl their left pinky toe a little bit and lose 30 points. You go, oh, what a scrub. And then you move on, and then you watch the dominant countries win 50 billion medals. And then you go, oh, yeah. They're good at what they do, right? So it works for the Olympics, but I don't know if it works for Street Fighter as much. I don't know if it's working. And so the point I'm getting at is, when you watched Capcom Cup previously, every single match were players that you had seen compete over an entire year and had head-to-head records with a lot of these players. They had a lot of screen time. They had a lot of screen presence. You had some level of familiarity and attachment to them throughout the season. And it's a double elimination bracket, which will always be more hype than groups. Groups is such a crapshoot in order to establish hype because most matches end up not mattering. And then when they do end up mattering, like in Group F, which was an absolute shit show due to the fact that we can't properly seed, and just the reason why players like Kaba, Ending Walker, Angry Bird were eliminated in last place, because you can't seed these things properly, because there's no point system through the season. This was the only hype group because you didn't know what the fuck was going on. Actually, Group H was hype too, for the same reason. Group H was hype because it was a bullshit tiebreaker, and you're doing advanced calculus to figure out who is in winners and who's in losers and who's being eliminated. Groups become hype when you don't know what's happening. Double elimination to me is guaranteed to be more exciting, or guaranteed to at least maintain some level of excitement, whereas groups, the majority of the time I would say they're not exciting, and then sometimes they become exciting. It's a gamble. So I do think we need to find a way to keep offering opportunities to players around the world, because I think a lot of regions are underrepresented and have a lot of strong talent, but I just think the balance right now is too much in the other direction. There are too many spots awarded to the World Warrior. The premieres, they seem like an afterthought. It seems like the whole tour is based on the World Warrior, and then they said, oh crap, we should throw some premieres in there, get rid of some of the spots from the World Warrior, make up this random schedule of premieres, and just make it whoever wins takes it. The scale has gone too much in the other direction. There were some legit arguments about previous tour structure where it was 100% based on points, the point system, and then there was an incredible amount of bias baked into where the events were and the availability to them, which is very fair to mention. That's true. But I think, once again, even from Capcom's perspective, if your priority is advertising the game, This is the worst advertisement for the most amount of cost possible. I don't understand. You're doing all these tournaments that are getting less attendance and less viewership, and then you're doing all these tournaments which get no viewership, and then Capcom Cup is less fun to watch. I think Capcom Cup has become less fun to watch. So I don't really know what this achieves. Last year's just felt random. It felt random. It didn't feel like the culmination of a whole year of the most successful Street Fighter game of all time. I just felt like the spectacle and the reverence wasn't there. And I was tearing up at previous Capcoms. Like, they felt so much bigger. Yeah, watching Red Bull Kumite was so much more fun than Capcom Cup. Was Kakadu in Capcom Cup? No! Because he was from Japan, and only 2 players get to go from Japan. It doesn't matter how fucking dominant you are throughout the whole season. You better win that one tournament or else you're not in. If you're a Japanese player, like Daigo saying this, I feel like it's maybe okay for things to say how they are now. It's sad, man. He's basically saying that the world does not care about them, about like him or like the Japanese players, that it's better for the world to not have to deal with Japanese players winning. Sorry, we're so good. Brother, we want the good players to go to tournaments. I am significantly more interested in a tournament when I know that top international players will be there. Significantly. In fact, that might be the only incentive I have to participate or watch a tournament. It might be the #1 thing for me. And him saying, you know, maybe it's better that we leave these spots to the rest of the world, let them catch up. Maybe it's better for the interest. I don't know if that's true, man. Maybe that's just me. Maybe there's some truth to this in some ways. I think there is some truth to this in some ways. I do think having participants from other regions is a beautiful thing. I do think it's a beautiful thing when players who had no opportunity otherwise do get a spot. I think there's a beautiful thing in that. But like I said, the balance is too far. Only 2 spots for players from Japan? Really? Really? I'm tired of people pretending like that's normal and fair. Like, that does not make sense. This is not the Olympics. I don't think the Olympic format is working. Look at the Japanese leaderboard for the World Warrior, by the way. Kakadu is a god somehow pulling out ahead. But look at the point spread. 10th place is 35 points. 20th place is 25 points. Look at the point spread. Where's Daigo? You wonder why Daigo is traveling to Milwaukee to try to qualify. It's like, shit, I got the money. I'm fucking trash in Japan. The only chance I have is to maybe go to Cream City, ECT, where all these bum-ass North Americans are, and win there. He's ranked 30th in Japan. Ryukichi, who eliminated Punk round 1 at Esports World Cup right after he won EVO. 26th place with 15 points. Tokido with 10. I heard people displeased with Capcom Cup 2019 because there's so many Japanese. I mean, I guess I can admit that does become a little bit more boring. But top 2 was NA. Were you displeased with Capcom Cup 2019 item? Was that displeasing for you? I agree that Capcom Cup is boring to watch, but it isn't because of what players are there. The event has been stripped of its soul. We get like 2 matches an hour with commentary that is completely cringe. I would argue the format is a huge part of that. Double elimination gets to the point. Every match matters. It's over. You finish it. Round robin over a week? Are you kidding me, my man? Give it up for day 14 of Street Fighter 6 round robin pools. The competitive format influences that vibe to a huge degree. People only care about top 8 though? Wrong. Absolutely wrong. You're telling me people don't watch pools at EVO? People only care about top 8 because you make a dog shit format where you should only care about top 8. Why would I care about the rest of this tournament? If you make the format bad, of course no one's going to care about the early parts of the tournament. You can't say that people only care about top 8 when you made a format where people only care about top 8. Top 64 at these major CPT premieres with world-class international competition present are the best matches. That's the most fun time to watch the tournament because there's so much variety. There are so many matches everywhere. Sometimes they need 2 streams. That was a thing even before EVO. They would do that with other CPT events as well. I think even like back in CPT 2017 final round, they had 2 streams going on at once. Top 64 in the past was nuts. Top 64 at Cream City? That's round 2 of TNS. But it's just so frustrating because Street Fighter 6 is so successful. And the other thing I'm considering is that they're really trying to just isolate Japan. Like Daigo talks about, we don't want to make it hard for the rest of the world. We shouldn't focus on only Japan. I'm getting the exact opposite impression. Like his points say, we have to build excitement overseas or you'll have a problem. I feel like Japan is the only region building excitement. I'm actually shocked he had this sentiment because to me, it feels like the only region where the competitive scene is growing is Japan. I think the rest of the world is taking a hit. I feel Daigo being in Capcom Cup will up viewership by 50K. It would. It would. The upcoming Super Major in Japan will probably be the most interesting one to watch of the year. Yeah, probably. Depending on how well it's run. I mean, gameplay-wise, should be the most interesting. We'll see how it's ran. Sometimes Japanese tournaments are a little strange. Should CPT be Invitational plus League? No. I think it should be the best players on the planet. Right now, I think it's more Invitational. Dude, you don't think that some of these regions are invitational? That's what this format is. I feel like I've been dancing around that fact for a long time. They are taking away spots from Japanese players and distributing them to the rest of the world. While they're doing that, they're investing in Street Fighter League Japan, which they're paying players a salary. They're investing in that. The World Warriors for Japan have tons of entrants. They have 700 plus entrants all the time. There's in-person studios or like venues where people are buying tickets to watch in person for this online tournament. Street Fighter 6 is big in Japan right now. So at the same time, while they're cutting off their access to Capcom Cup, it feels like all the other avenues of Street Fighter esports in Japan is growing, to the point where it feels like they're cutting off their connection to the rest of the world. Like, Capcom Cup doesn't matter. The Japanese players are going to focus on World Warrior, and if they get into Capcom Cup, cool, but the focus is just participating in this tournament series and Street Fighter League. And you might even just try to do the World Warrior so that you get picked up for Street Fighter League. It feels like the World Warrior is your audition for Street Fighter League, almost. That's what it was for Boost. Yeah. I really hope we find a better balance. We do need to invest in online infrastructure and online tournaments. The netcode is too good. The world is too big to not try to capitalize on that and try to get people in from all parts of the world. However, something needs to be done about the offline tournament scene. Offline events are the greatest advertisement you can have for the game. Nobody watches the World Warriors, and making a format where players are not incentivized to travel and instead are more incentivized to stay home and stream is sad. It's sad. Anyways, rant done. I hope in the future we can all be engaged in competitive Street Fighter. People from all over the world get opportunities, and we have an entertaining competitive season. Anyways, should I play the game? I'm tired now. Anyone else want a nap?